Welcome back to part 4 of Building a Reputation, chapter 4 of A Thora Silentblade tale. The next day, while holding the reins, Thor's mind began to wander, imagining the looks on the people's faces in town as they rode in with a wagon full of equipment to hand out. This was what Thora had wanted, the chance to take the risk and help those in need. The forge never had the same fulfillment, at least not once Thora had tasted the feel of battle for a cause. A bump in the road brought Thora back to the moment at hand and caused the dwarf to scan quickly to make sure the wagon wasn't heading off the road. The sheriff sat in the other seat, while on either side of the wagon rode the rest of the party, with the horses they had commandeered from the stable. On the dark deserted roadway, the cool wind ruffled their hair, while the warm smell of the desert rose up in the air to meet them. Up ahead, in the distance, Thora saw a shimmering light. Then it was gone? Perhaps it would be better to pay closer attention to where they were going, Thora thought with a shake of the head. Can't be going about seeing things that aren't there. When the town of Wilted Gulch finally came into view, a bit of the wariness of the road fell away, replaced with the excitement that always rose up in Thora upon arrival at a destination. This small desert town wasn't home, but it also wasn't a trail kicking dust up in your eyes with nothing much to see as far as the eye could see. It was a welcome sight. There was no parade set out to welcome the heroes, no cheering from the windows, just the furtive glances from behind curtained windows. Arriving at the sheriff's station, the group dismounted and unlocked the prisoner's cage on the wagon. The lone surviving captive they had been carting around was to become a guest at Sheriff Dean's station. Indefinitely, perhaps, so long as the locals didn't have other plans for him. Placing Cavendish's poster on her desk, Dean dropped a sack of gold on top of the dead man's face. "Your reward, folks. 300 gold coin, alive or dead," the sheriff offered. The group hadn't talked about the reward, and honestly, Thora had forgotten all about it, having been focused on the job and getting it done. In the end, the others agreed to let the town keep the reward to help rebuild the local businesses that had been hurt by Cavendish and his thugs. Sheriff Dean shrugged and offered instead a letter of record that they could use to show proof of the help they had given to Wilted Gulch. Thora had been drawn at first to the town because of a similar promise, and this would certainly help with building a reputation in the region. Outside, Dwayne and Allendale were setting up a booth to hand out to those who were in need. Between the gold being handed out and the goods from the ranch house, a bit of commotion was beginning in the town streets. A little too much commotion. Folks had been keeping themselves shut in because of the Cavendish gang, but this seemed like far too many people spilling out from the nearby buildings. These small homes were filled with 8 to 10 people, multiple families under a single small roof. They were practically packed in like hearthbread in a basket. The sheriff explained that the population of the town had been growing rather rapidly recently, despite the Cavendish gang coming around. A band of goblins had been making the rounds outside of town, pillaging, harassing, and sometimes killing those in the outlying farms and homesteads. It had driven a lot of people into Wilted Gulch over the past few weeks, and was definitely the most pressing issue facing the town, now that Cavendish and his bullies had been dealt with. Thora looked at the others with an eyebrow raised. They had only just met a few days ago, but it seemed like fate was dealing them an opportunity to do some good together, and the soldier knew that a squad that trusted each other would always work better than a lone operative. It didn't take much to get the others on board. It was time to hunt some goblins. Well, perhaps a little celebration first. Back at the tavern where it all began, Thora waved a hearty hello to the tabaxi behind the bar and settled in with the group at a table. Allendale, hoping to raise the spirits of the town, pulled out his drums and began playing a rhythm for the crowd. At the table, the elfin dwarfs sat down to share the found elven wine and enjoy the rhythms of their new companion. Perhaps it was the long night, the long road, or a particularly strong strain of the ale, but Thora did not face the liquor well. The dwarf's speech got more than a little slurred, and, as usual, this brought out the stories. The ranger at the table with Thora brought to mind an old friend, Thrain Iron Woodshot. There was a happiness in the soldier's voice as the tale of Thrain began, memories of good times together. Thrain was the best archer the dwarf had ever worked with until, unfortunately, Thrain's face had been ripped off during a mission in the deeper mines. As it turned out, bows weren't entirely effective against the claws of those dark creatures. Thora shuddered a little, holding the glass with both rough hands as the memory came back in full. Across from the dwarf, the elf had fallen asleep, face down on the table between them. Perhaps Thora needed to work on the storytelling a little. The bard, meanwhile, was having a rough go of it. His beats did not seem to be capturing the hearts of the locals quite right. Perhaps they weren't used to the old songs of the Dragonborn's people. In a drunken haze, Thora was sure that some help would be welcomed. The wizard, Dwayne, had been buying up instruments around town, whatever folks happened to have, and there was quite the collection now. Grabbing a flute, the dwarf managed to get a few notes out miraculously. Rather than help Allendale, though, it seemed to throw the bard off. It didn't stop the drunk dwarf from playing along, though. The music was rough, but it made Thora's heart feel light. That night, the soldier's sleep was deep and free of the nightmares.